Before I get before I get started with this story, let me give a shout out to my patron Jason on Patreon for sending me this story. This is kind of an update to a story that I talked about a few months ago that just kind of went silent after a while, but it's coming back into light. And this is another example of white privilege grandstanding on itself yet again. I found myself doing a lot of white privilege stories in the last couple of weeks, and they all just keep continuing to mount on and get worse than the previous ones. So if y'all don't know who this guy is, this guy's name is Dustin Boone, and he was involved with helping to assault a black colleague of his. This is not someone that he worked with. I believe that the cop that he helped assault was a black cop out of St. Louis. I think the story goes that they thought that the black cop was off duty and something happened, and he was telling them, look, I'm off duty, but I'm a cop just like you. I work in the same department and everything. But even when he told them that, they still assaulted this man because it wasn't just him that was involved. It was him and two other guys. But he's the main focus today that we're talking about. Now, his white privilege kicks in because he asked a judge for a lighter sentence than he already had. And guess what the judge did? Gave him a lighter sentence. Now, mind you, his sentence was already light as it was, but he got a lighter sentence just on the strength of asking for it, or it's probably some more to it. But either way, his request was granted. Let's get into it. A federal judge gave a white former St. Louis police officer less than half the prison time his own defense lawyers asked for on Monday after he was convicted for his role in the beating of an undercover black colleague during the 2017 racial justice protests in the city. Dustin Boone, age 37, was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day in prison for aiding and abetting the deprivation of civil rights under color of law of undercover officer Luther Hall. He was convicted in June after a 9-day trial. Prosecutors had asked that Boone be in prison for 10 years. His own defense team had asked for just over 2 years. By sentencing Hall to just 1 day over the 1-year sentence, U.S. District Judge E. Richard Weber ensured the former police officer will also be eligible to have time taken off of his sentence for good behavior, which means he most likely won't even have to do the new sentencing that he got of 1 year and a day. He might be out in less than a year. The light sentence prompted Hall and his stunned supporters to walk out of the courtroom in disgust, according to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. The incident occurred during weeks of protests in St. Louis, prompted by the acquittal of another former police officer, Jason Stockley, over the 2011 fatal shooting of Anthony Lamar Smith. On the evening of September 17, 2017, Hall had been undercover when he was pinned to the ground by Boone and beaten with a baton by a third officer, Randy Hayes, who both mistook Hall for a protester. The beating left Hall, who had not violated any laws and was not resisting arrest, with permanent injuries and pain as well as post-traumatic stress disorder. He subsequently reached a $5 million settlement with the department. Prosecutors released evidence showing Boone had been showing off for his girlfriend by live streaming his actions to her via a FaceTime video call. She had texted him that viewing the footage was so cool, but after learning days later that he had assaulted a fellow officer, he wrote to her saying, "Nothing about that story to anyone. Please, not something I am proud of." Prosecutors also released text messages Boone had written to other police officers prior to the beating, in which he appeared to relish the opportunity to violently squash the protest. "But it's going to be a lot of fun beating the hell out of these shitheads once the sun goes down and nobody can tell us apart," he wrote in one message. They also released evidence showing that months before, Boone had used the N-word in a text with another officer, and that he had previously boasted about being violent with people he had arrested. The government had asked for a 10-year prison sentence to reflect the seriousness of the offense and deter criminal conduct by officers. "Our society has delegated the use of appropriate force to our law enforcement officers," prosecutors wrote. "The vast majority of police officers take this responsibility seriously." Defendant did not. Boone's defense attorneys argue he did not initiate the attack on Hall nor strike him, but instead kneeled on Hall's back and used his hands to hold the undercover officer's neck. They said Boone felt prey to a police culture of excessive force that permeated his own department, but that he should be judged for his individual actions and not made a sacrificial lamb for every police officer. The defense attorneys admitted Boone's texts were repugnant and offensive, but included statements from friends and family that the officer was not a racist. How was he not a racist? They said in most text messages, he said the N-word. He boasted about going out and attacking people. Mind you, this is a whole cop, but you know what? That shouldn't really make a difference because many of them think the same way. He was just thinking out loud. He even live streamed when he was attacking this man to his girlfriend and thought it was something to, like they say, relish over. He enjoyed doing that. He did all of that, and all he had to do was, and his attorney say, we want to give him, can we get a lighter sentence? And the judge said, sure you can. And if you do, and if you are really good in jail, we'll lessen your sentence. You could be out in less than that. And who knows? You might be able to get your job back. See what I mean? Us versus them. In response to that defense, prosecutors released racist text messages between Boone and his family to argue that they shared his sentiments. The text messages showed Boone's father, mother, and sister comparing the black protesters to monkeys, using the word nigglets, and saying the demonstrators were banging drums as if they were back in Africa doing a rain dance. The family's contention that the texts do not reflect the real defendant are contradicted by their own offensive text. In his sentencing, Weber said he believed officers had used unreasonable force on Hall because he is black, but said Boone was not one of the officers who beat or kicked him, according to the Post-Dispatch, even though he's on video doing just that. Or at least on video cheering it on, which makes it just as bad. In July, Weber sentenced Hayes, the former officer who struck Hall with the baton, to just over 4 years in prison. Weber sentenced a third former officer, Bailey Coletta, to 3 years of probation and 2 consecutive weekends in prison for lying to a grand jury about the incident. Wow, so imagine if he had not lied. He wouldn't even have to do 2 weekends. So this is white privilege just spread across the board. So we have a person that is going to do a year and a day, maybe less for good behavior. We have someone who didn't even go to jail and only had to do 2 weekends because he lied to the grand jury. And the other one, he's getting just over 4 years, which means it's barely over 4 years, but not even quite enough to call it 4 years. One of the attorneys representing Hall, the victim, told BuzzFeed News he was not yet ready to speak with the media. But before Boone was released, Hall told Weber he believed the prior 2 sentences demonstrated leniency that's not shown to black defendants. You've increased that racial divide in the city, Hall told the judge. Like I said, this is white privilege yet again, grandstanding on itself yet again. As usual, no surprise there. And all he had to do was ask. Now, you just heard me read this entire article. This guy is a stone cold racist. He's ignorant, he's a bigot, and he's a menace. And they said he was sharing all types of racial text messages with his family. Kind of reminds you of the video that I just did about the one that Christopher Belter up in New Hampshire, who basically had the assistance of his family, helping to lure those minor teenage girls to the house so he could have his way with them by giving them drugs and alcohol. And nothing happened to him, and nothing's happening to them. Just like in this case, there's barely anything happened to this guy, just like there's gonna be barely anything that's gonna happen with his family. And the thing is, they're not gonna try to get the family on the racial text messages, although they should. But see, this is what happens when black people in America don't have a hate crime bill on the books. We're left wide open for attack. So, like, really take into consideration everything that I just read for you and everything that this guy did. And he got a slap on the wrist. Now, had this been a complete 360 and it was the black guy in the hot seat and this guy, was the one who was in the position of the black cop, you can only imagine how that would have went. The black cop wouldn't have had to do a fraction of what this guy did. The hell, they would have probably get him on, why didn't you assist him? Oh, we're sending you to jail because you didn't help out your fellow man. But like I said, that blue wall only benefits people who look like him, and not only just look like him, but act like him too. Because you can't just, it's not just the thing of you can't look the part, you have to be the part, you have to be in the role, you have to be in the moment. But that's just a message I give to the black cops. I just did one about how Blue Lives Matter doesn't affect or doesn't benefit black cops, with the other black cop who was doing his job and he gets charged after he gets racially taunted and the person he's apprehended doesn't comply. And this black cop, he was undercover and he gets beat and taunted because they thought he was one of the protesters and they thought it was a game, because they enjoy going after and attacking black people. They enjoy that. My question to the black cop is, if he was undercover, did he have his power tool on him? Because I'm gonna be honest, it would have got used that night, but something tells me he wouldn't have got as much leniency had he used it. They wouldn't have said he was defending himself. Because remember, when black people defend themselves, you know, it doesn't count. Look at what happened with the story of John Coffey IV and Kenneth Walker and so many other black people before them. That self-defense thing and that stand your ground thing, that don't work for us, even if you are a cop. Or the fear for my life, that definitely don't work for us. I can't remember a black person ever actually used that line, because they know it don't work for them. When's the last time you seen fear for my life work for a black person or black cop? Because I haven't seen it. They may have said it, but I've never seen it actually work for them. So fear for my life, stand my ground, defend myself. 3 things that should be working across the board for everybody does not work for us. We've seen that time and time again. Just like time and time again, we've seen it work for people like this guy. All the stuff that he did, and he gets a year and a day and possibly less than that if he displays good behavior. That's all I have to say.